Hey guys, I have read your submission for your annotated bibliographies and have provided feedback to all of your teams through Blackboard this morning and this afternoon. So that feedback is available to you. I want to encourage you to make sure that you're taking the time to hover over all of your highlighted areas. Look for the little notation. It looks like a little sticky note throughout your paper. Make sure you're reading all the feedback that's been provided to you. Don't ever hesitate to ask me if feedback is unclear or if you need additional feedback. Something you should know, especially with APA and reference lists, if you're making a recurrent error, let's say you are consistently forgetting commas and periods, I'm going to correct it once. I'm going to highlight it and say, hey, go look at this. And then I'm going to tell you that it's a recurrent error. I'm not going to go through your entire reference list and repeatedly correct it or address it. It may not be addressed further at all. There's some times that I may go through and just highlight it. So if you see highlighting and there's no comment associated with it, go back and look and see if I've highlighted the same element in your references repeatedly. The clue is going to be I've probably highlighted it a few times to say, hey, this really is something you need to look at. You all did a really, really good job with the annotated bibliographies. All of you had enough articles to support your PICO. Your articles were all recent. They were all relevant. They appeared to align with what you were looking for. So you certainly made my job a whole lot easier, being able to just enjoy the content and be able to focus more on that and less on alignment issues. So you all are all in a really good spot to be able to move forward to your part 4. One thing you're going to notice is part 1 of this assignment was 5% because I knew that you would probably wobble a little bit and need to get your footing under you to get your PICO. This part of it, your annotated bibliography, was basically a collation of, okay, we found all of this stuff, and then you had to put it in a format. So that was 10% of your grade. The next 2 assignments are going to bump up in the percentage of your grade. So your part, I think it's step 3 for week 4. This assignment requires more critical thinking. It requires a higher level of scholarly effort or analysis. You're going to need to spend some time really looking at the articles that you have pulled to support your P-code. So this part or step 3 has you doing that analysis. I want to remind you that this analysis is not a summary of everything you found. I shouldn't be reading all 10 to 15 of your article summaries, just copied and pasted. My encouragement to you is to, if you're a printing person or a virtual person, you can use virtual sticky notes. If you're a printing person, print all your articles off and literally use a Post-it note. Identify in each of your articles, what were the key findings? What was the population they used? Consider the sample size. How big of a population was it? How small of a population was it? And this will help you kind of chunk your articles together and being able to say, okay, of my 10 articles, these 3 agreed in this, and these 2 agreed in this, and these 4 agreed in this other area. But this one over here was way different. They found something completely different, or they found something novel or interesting. Your synthesis or your summary is going to be related to those findings. So those similarities are going to be reported in your part 3 in that design. So in my weekly introduction, I reminded you that you would use combined in-text citations. Well, you're going to do that for your batch of articles, those 3 that found similar things, or those 2 that found similar things, and that 4 group that found similar things. You're going to be able to use those combined in-text citations to organize that. Your outliers, your one-offs, the ones that are different than other ones, you're going to probably put in their own section under their own heading that are going to address the differences. So you should have multiple level headings in the paper. So level 1 is absolutely, you're already using that. You're going to add level 2, and probably in the next step you'll add level 3. But level 2 is left justified. It breaks down a little bit more of a granular level of what you're talking about in those topics, and it's going to guide your writing as well as guide your readers. So know that level 1, level 2 are expected in this step of your paper. So as you do that analysis of what's similar, and then you do that analysis of how are they different, then you're going to answer your repeat question. What did you find? Did you answer it the way you thought you would? I'm going to encourage you to restate your repeat question and say, and this is the answer to it because. It's not enough to say, we've answered our PICO's question and this is better than this. You want to give some brief summary of, and this is better than this because of these findings. You want to avoid repeating everything you said in your analysis section, but there's going to be a little bit of overlap. You're going to be rephrasing what you've said earlier in more of a concise format. So you'll do your analysis, your similarities and differences. Then you're going to give your PICO question. You're going to explore that. Again, that's probably going to have its own level heading. And then you're going to talk about limitations. One of the values of sticky noting all of your articles and looking at your population and your sample size is it helps you figure out the quality of your article. I don't want you to ever think that quantitative and qualitative articles are bad or good or stronger or weaker as far as scholarly value or research value. I want you to be looking at the data. How big was the sample size? Was there any bias because the article and the research was supported by a company that was looking and had more interest in the outcome than they should have? Maybe the article was about a device and looking at whether the device was effective for your population, and the group of researchers were employees or funded through a grant by that device company. Then you're going to want to address bias. At the graduate level, we would talk about type 1 and type 2 bias. We would talk about the complexity of the analysis that could occur. I'm not interested in you doing that kind of deep dive at this level. I do want you to understand that if you pulled 10 articles and you feel like those 10 articles, of those, 7 support your intervention. They say this is a fabulous idea. Okay. But what if those 7 of those 10 articles were all pilot studies and all of their samples were less than 30 patients? It's really hard to make a generalized statement about a finding when your sample sizes are consistently small. So you need to make sure that you really understand what kind of study was this? What was the sample size? Was there any limitation that the author is going to tell you about? And you're going to find that in the body of your well-supported research paper. So that's going to be your next section. And for our purposes, I think that's this week. Yes, so that's the last step for this paper. When you submit this week, you're going to have part 1, and you're going to polish it up. You're going to make the corrections that feedback was provided to you during week 1. So you're going to clean up step 1 of this project. You are not going to submit your annotated bibliography again. That was its own animal. You're going to follow part 1, and then you're going to do part 2. Part 2 is your analysis. That is, I guess it's step 3. These being off kilter of being one step, but in a different week is making me crazy. So if I cause confusion, please forgive me. Step 1, step 3, they're the narrative part of your paper. They're going to be submitted as a combined paper. So it should read fluidly like a paper. The annotated bibliography is a done deal. You don't turn that back in. Sometimes, depending on the project, like if you were doing a doctoral degree, you may take your annotated bibliography and make it an appendix. Or if you did a literature matrix, which is a chart format of an annotated bibliography, that may be attached as an appendix. You don't need to do that for our purposes. Put that to bed. The design of that was to make sure that you were on the right track in gathering your information and that I could give you that feedback and make sure you didn't get too off track. So you're done with that. So step 1 and step 3 are going to be combined into a combined paper. You're going to make sure that you've applied all that feedback for correcting your reference list, for integrating level headings, for integrating your correct format of in-text citations. You're going to make sure you're using combined in-text citations in that step 3. Your title page is going to be clean. Make sure you address running heads if you had issues with that. This paper should be about 7 pages, not including your title page, not including your reference list. Okay. If you're plus or minus, that's okay, not multiple pages. So if you are beyond 7 pages, I want you to go back and reread what you've read and figure out where you are being overly redundant. This really could be done in about 5 pages. So be very careful how concise you are. My encouragement is, as a team, figure out how you're going to create that draft, but then before you submit it, it needs to have multiple eyes reading it all as one paper. So have one person agree, I'm going to read the paper from beginning to end and make sure that it all flows the way it needs to, that it sounds like one person wrote this paper instead of everybody turning in their part of the paper and it sounding like 5 people wrote a paper. Have one person be the detailed person to go back through and read, not content, but look for all the APA stuff. And then have one person go through and read the whole thing, including APA, where that very last thing, and that be the person that submits it. That's my encouragement. Certainly not a requirement. I've just found that as when I'm working in a team, especially if it's a collaborative paper, that it's so much more valuable if you have multiple eyes on a paper at multiple iterations. It just helps you catch the smaller things. If you don't want to do that now, that's okay. As we get closer to wrapping up this project, you're really going to want to make sure that you are looking at a productive way to look at all these details so that you're not missing it. Keep in mind the last step is going to be to look at an innovative intervention that addresses your PCOT topic. So continue to keep your eyes out for something that is new and shiny, something interesting, something novel that's coming about specific to your area of your research question. It does not have to be your intervention. It could be that in the process of looking at your problem that you found something different and that there's not enough research on it to really compare and contrast like an intervention or a comparator, but it's the next generation of things we're going to be looking at as we evolve in our understanding of your nurse sensitive topics. So I think I have covered all of my notes. Okay, 2 things. If you are using formatting software, no harm, no foul. I've used them in my past. There's nothing wrong with using software that does your formatting for you with APA, but understand that you need to know as much as your formatting software does. Because if you plug something in the incorrect blank, you're going to get gobbledygook and it's going to go in it'll be in the wrong place. So if you're finding something that is a repeat error and you are using formatting software, know that it is a user error, not likely a software error. So don't throw out your software, but go back in and figure out what have I put in the wrong place and what have I missed. The other thing to do, and I've added this under our textbook and resources, is a website. It's called Crossref. It is in there as a hyperlink. It is a fantastic source for helping you find your DOIs or your issue numbers or your page numbers. It is a collated source of the available DOIs and research articles in a meta database. It is just the coolest thing, and it's free. So all you have to do is put in as much information about your article as you have and drop it into Crossref and see if they can find stuff for you. I'll tell you it's not 100%, but it's one of the best tools I have found for finding missing elements. Sometimes it's not that the article or the journal has not published it with the article. Sometimes they bury it in weird places. And in the online world, when we're reading something online, sometimes it's just an Easter egg hunt trying to find something. The other thing to do is try PubMed. Sometimes dropping in the name of your article with as much information as you have. PubMed is the other source that's really good about finding pieces and parts. So one of those two should be able to help you make sure you have all the elements of your reference. I think that is it. If you have questions or concerns, know that I am here. Know that I am happy to meet with you and chat. I think you guys are all on really solid footing to begin to approach step 4. Just let me know if there's anything I can do to help you. I hope you guys are having a good week. Clearly in my world, it is quiet here because baby Grace is still taking a nap and has not realized that it is time for DINNER. So I'm going to inform her shortly. I hope you guys have a good evening. Take care.